Leviathan, one of the most iconic characters in the Homa universe. Maybe you also know that many seasons have passed. We are like in season 26 right now, which is kinda crazy to think about. So Homa gifted us many versions of Leviathan. But sometimes it can get confusing, like who is the real Leviathan and how and why did he change his form so many times. In this video we will have a look at that. We will go through the entire story of Homa's Leviathan. Maybe I will also talk about some side stories just because they are related to Leviathan. So I don't want to yap too much, let's begin! Cinema. In Season 1 everything has started. To be honest, Season 1 had kinda of a plot, but Homa sometimes threw just some monsters in the series. Also with Leviathan. The German T-35 general summoned the first version of Leviathan. I also have to spoiler that this is actually a clone of Leviathan and not the real one. Like no tank can harm him, except these two tanks who can penetrate his armor. So and that's how the first clone of Leviathan gets destroyed. And also we get to see the main villain of the series, who isn't Leviathan. Then the series goes on with a bit more plot development, and eventually Robo-Stalin has to fight against Dora. But out of nowhere another Leviathan appears. It seems like that Leviathan sent another clone. However, basically the same thing happens. Leviathan gets hit again by that special projectile, and while Dora is about to end Robo-Stalin's life, Robo-Stalin takes Leviathan with him, and Leviathan gets basically one hit from Dora. Up to that point we don't know much about Leviathan, just that he's a pretty powerful monster, but he hasn't said like anything. He has no appearance in Season 2 and in that special season of North Africa. Till Season 3, where we see the real Leviathan for the first time. He decides to help out the Germans to build a moon base and help them preparing a new army. But in order to build that army, they need resources. So Leviathan sends two henchmen who should then capture the iron mines in Poland. But for some reason they decide to clash against KV-44 and the artillery tank. But as Leviathan's plan to build up an army takes its course, man, that hair is kinda annoying, man. Eventually the iron mines get freed by KV-6. And after the failure of Waffenträger and Ratte, Leviathan visits them to punish them. By killing Waffenträger directly off and banishing Ratte to the Labyrinth of Death. For sure you have noticed that his horn looks different. I haven't really got an explanation why. I would just guess that Homa wanted to upgrade his design. So now Leviathan has two main plans. At first he wants to keep running the iron mines to build up his army, or the army of the Germans. And secondly he wants to capture the Chinese bunker. Because the Chinese bunker is the place where the Russians retreated last time. And after Leviathan could ore farm by recapturing the iron mines, he also farmed some ore by just opening the Chinese bunker with one shot, while the Germans were spending whole episodes. And lucky for him he manages to find KV-54 in the Chinese bunker and turns him later to his henchman. Then in the sense of combat Leviathan doesn't have much to do, he's preparing many things. He watches the Labyrinth of Death villains to kill each other out. Why, you are maybe asking? We will come to that later. And the T-35 channel shows the first version of these tank robots. And after that season we don't get to see Leviathan for a long time. Season 4 begins relatively interesting, so Ratte managed to defeat all the villains in the Labyrinth of Death. He absorbed all their powers and now he goes to Earth to take revenge on Leviathan. Also I want to add that I was one of the Labyrinth of Death competition winners, so Homa combined some design choices of my Dragonzilla with I think some other winners, I think at least. And then the Executioner turned out, so without me the Executioner wouldn't probably look like he looks today. So we get an epic fight between Leviathan and Ratte. And even though the fight is way more dynamic than the fights we were used to of Homer, Leviathan gets beaten up very badly. Like ratte finishes him off without taking serious damage. Sometimes I don't understand why Homer lets characters overperform so much in the past seasons and then kills them off so fast. But now you see why Leviathan wanted the villains in the Labyrinth of Death to kill each other so that he can absorb the powers from Ratte. So Leviathan actually lives and we get Leviathan 3.0. So basically in terms of power, the same as Leviathan 2.0, but now additionally with the powers he has stolen from Ratte. And the first time in this series we get a bit more context to Leviathan's life, because we get to know Morok. Also we learn that Leviathan's world isn't like hellish like in Gerand's version. And then sometime later Morok and Leviathan clash against each other. Actually not for the first time, but this was like the first time where it was a serious fight. So now we see live how Leviathan creates a clone of himself, and that clone gets defeated with a lot of plot armor. Am I the only one who finds it pretty OP that Leviathan just can make a copy of himself? And maybe then he needs to spend much of his energy, but that clone is still as powerful as Leviathan himself. It's kinda OP. Why hasn't he utilized that in the past? So after Leviathan retreated again, he's now preparing for something else. At first he revives Dora, who then turns out to be a really effective defense. And Leviathan is now building up an army, but a separate one. Like after helping out the Germans, he leaves them and just lets them do their work, you know. But the new army he's building for another purpose. Because his goal is to capture a special castle, maybe it's his former home or something like that. I was kinda lazy to research that. But the important thing is that there is like a great evil which keeps turning tanks to evil tanks and destroying worlds. So Leviathan and Morok's father sacrificed himself in order to seal away the evil. But Leviathan's plan is to get to his father and to take that special crown, because with that crown he can harness the great evil and then will just be unstoppable. So the Great War breaks out, many characters die. Also I forgot to mention that KV6 got turned to evil after dying. So eventually we see a rematch of Morok and Leviathan, and of course Morok dies because Leviathan is just too OP. And also there's that one tank which Leviathan constructed, and the only purpose of this tank is to break open that door. I could imagine that the door is probably immune to Leviathan's attacks. So Leviathan manages to enter the basement of that castle. He fights his father, which is actually a really exciting fight. Leviathan nearly dies, but the powers of his former henchman save him, and now he has the crown. So now he is immortal and can destroy everything. Nah, Morok wasn't that dumb. Before Leviathan entered the basement, or you know where his father were located in, Morok actually took a part of that crown and hid it. So in case if Leviathan would succeed, he still needs that other part, which is very smart. So now Leviathan returns to that moon base to repair himself or just to get strength. But that German T-35 is very smart. He sees that Leviathan is pretty damaged. I mean, wouldn't you be really damaged if you had to fight against your father? However, this leads to a little combat in the moon base, where the Waffentrager, with some help from T-35, manages to kill Leviathan with one shot at his head, which came really surprisingly. I know Leviathan was really damaged and T-35 prepared himself, and Waffentrager isn't also the weakest character, but like, I think that Homer sometimes lets especially his evil characters at first overfarm a bit and then kills them off pretty easily. So what's really interesting is after Leviathan dies, all the souls he has absorbed from Ratte get released, and are about to turn the moon base apart. And also Mimic, that's like a slime that can copy other identities, is able to take Leviathan's body. And now the Mimic that we knew today is born. And at that point, I don't know if I should talk about Mimic, because Mimic basically is the corpse of Leviathan, but he isn't Leviathan, you know. But to just summarize what he's doing all the time, Mimic manages to regather all the powers from all the villains, except that one robot guy who then revives another villain, and yes, that's another side thing. And now we go on with Morg, his storyline. Why? You will see that. So you remember that I talked about KV6 who got turned evil? Yes, he died in the castle, but the Russians like took his corpse into the Russian fortress, and it turns out that the parasite which possessed Ratte some time ago now gets control of KV6. In fact, KV6 somehow gets revived but is still evil, and after Morg barely survived the fight against Leviathan, he gets damaged way worse while fighting KV6. We also learn some more backstory where Morg and Leviathan were kids. We also get to hear a monologue of Leviathan, of his ideology, and to be honest, even though it gives Leviathan more character, it's that basic speech of a villain who wants to bring order and wants to kill everything. But not even that, he just wants to take over the power of his world. So Morg is now so heavily damaged that they need something to repair him. And because Morg is kinda made out of the same metal as his father, a team goes to that one dimension with the big oven, smelt the corpse of Leviathan's father, take away the remainings and repair Morg with that. And it turns out that Morg got a serious power boost. But that has a reason, because now listen, Leviathan is now inside Leviathan. To be honest, I just let Leviathan explain all this.
My mind and take over my body. Oh, it wasn't easy. I had to die and be reborn on purpose so many times. I had to break my power and mind into pieces to make a unique picture out of the right puzzles, which resulted in me getting you and the crown. You haven't answered my question. It's a no-brainer, brother. The metal that was sawed off and melted down to repair you was imbued with my will. You are me from now on. Be quiet. Stay here and don't go anywhere. It's time to make a new history of the world.
Yeah, I have to say that at that time that was a really crazy plot twist. I wish that he would do other plot twists like that. So Leviathan is kinda alive again. To be honest, something I haven't really understood is now Leviathan had that crown and like everything he needed, but I didn't quite understand why he was still chilling in the Russian fortress, reviving KV6, who in addition was way too powerful. However, as we saw before, Leviathan consumed the soul of Morg, so Morg now has to fight to the outside of Leviathan's mind. He manages to upgrade himself, and then after defeating that one guardian, he's now free. And this leads us to the third fight between the both brothers. And guess who loses that fight? Morg for the third time. So now Leviathan has Morg's powers, but now Mimic wants to take advantage. But Leviathan is smarter than him and just acted like that he was weak, something like that. So Leviathan repairs himself and now fights against Mimic. And at first it seems like that Leviathan wins that fight against Mimic, but Mimic is actually manipulating Leviathan. So Leviathan was fighting against all the versions of KV6 till he realized that this was all just an illusion. Who would have thought? Oh, actually I forgot to tell that. After Morg got defeated by Leviathan, Leviathan had to defeat Morg also in his mind. Morg got defeated 4 times. But however, Morg manages to save Leviathan by releasing his good form. I don't really know why. I think Mimic kinda absorbed the evil side of Leviathan, and so Angelic Leviathan could get freed. So after that, Mimic leaves and he thinks that he has now free will, but something he hasn't considered is that he has absorbed the big evil from Leviathan, and now he has to do a favor for that big evil. Mimic now has to defeat some guardians in order to open a big gate so that the big evil can release its power, something like that. In the meantime, Leviathan searches for his old friend. We get a bit more backstory that he has a friend. So he seeks his old friend because he was a cartographer. Eventually they fight because the evil also possessed his friend, Leviathan's friend. So now Leviathan knows where to go. Eventually, after Mimic and Leviathan killed off some guardians, they meet each other. And we see that Leviathan is clearly stronger than Mimic, but the Dark Evil then takes over the dead or half-dead body of Mimic and finishes Leviathan off. The gate is opened and the big evil reveals itself as the Techno Demon. So the Techno Demon is released and Mimic now wants to work with Leviathan to save the world. They go to the Russians, let them repair themselves. They also pick up another parasite in order to destroy a Techno Demon base, something like that. In the later seasons, Leviathan is able to fight way more villains. At first he fights Hypnosis in his KV6 form, where Leviathan takes surprisingly much damage. I mean, it's basically a draw. I didn't know that Techno Hypnosis KV6 was so OP. And later he fought Cataclysm, where Leviathan actually won. I haven't explained who Cataclysm is. Cataclysm is technically Leviathan 1.0 who got revived by the Techno Demon. So now we have basically two Leviathans coexisting at the same time. If we count Mimic, we have three Leviathans coexisting at the same time. Yeah, I mean, that's how Homer designed the plot. Yeah, and the last notable thing is that Leviathan trains a henchman of that toxic villain. Toxicus was his name, I think. And yeah, now we are in the present. Leviathan hasn't done very much now. To be honest, I'm pretty excited to see what he will do in the future or what role he will play, because he used to be that massive, powerful, evil guy, and now he's like a bit a side character who nearly gets defeated by every villain. I don't know. But maybe Homer will implement him very well in the story. So yeah, that was the video. Thanks for watching. So yeah, stay tuned, share this video. Bye! Here's the inconsistency. And here is the inconsistency, this is the inconsistency. Okay. And this is the